This is an account of the planet of Pulchra, a once beautiful lush green world that many once considered a shining jewel of prosperity amongst the many worlds of the Imperium. For millennia, its modest population lived in peace, a rarity in this universe of unending war. This makes the events that are about to unfold all the more tragic. It is then perhaps unsurprising that few chronicles about this planet can be found in the Imperial archives. For the Imperium doesn't like reminding itself of things it cannot come to understand. Even upon the most blissful of worlds, the mark of chaos is an ever-lingering threat. Unbeknownst to even the agents of the Inquisition, heresy was unfolding within the unsuspecting human population of Pulchra. It all started when a small chaos cult broke from society and settled deep within one of the world's lush forests. Even deep in the confines of Pulchra's woods, the comfortable planet provided plentiful food and resources, and so the outcasts thrived. Under the patronage of their dark gods, within a few years, the inbreeding tribe expanded their depraved community to great numbers. Far from imperial civilization, their existence would not be noticed until their community had already grown to a significant size. Their kind had mutated, and by now become unrecognizable as normal humans. Upon first encounter, it was believed that the tribe was some yet undiscovered species of Xenos. Their shapes were vaguely humanoid and shared many uncanny similarities with canines and felinids. Due to their bodies being covered in thick, vibrant-colored hair, the local population began referring to them as furlings or furries. Although inherently a repugnant species, they appeared to be relatively harmless. Little did the people of Pulchra realize that the threat was way more severe than they could imagine, for they were in fact sharing their planet with a rapidly growing cult of deeply corrupted Slaanesh worshippers. The mutant population's rapid expansion was of course noticed. Their kind bred like rabbits, and soon the forests of the planet were filled with their horrid spawn. The problem was getting out of hand. Something would have to be done to contain their spread. But the millennia of quiet peace on the planet created weak men, and the docile population of Pulchra did not have the military means to put an end to the mutant plague that stalked their lands in ever-increasing numbers. And so Pulchra officially requested the Imperium for support. None other than the Black Templars answered their call for aid. After all, it was their devout chapter who abhorred the witch and the mutant above all else, and would not suffer them to live. The Templars vowed that the beautiful world of Pulchra would be cleansed of this plague once and for all. But as far as the wider Imperium was concerned, the mutants were only considered a minor threat. The nearby Black Templars fleet was authorized to send in a small strike force. This was deemed sufficient. If given the time, even a handful of Astartes could easily exterminate these creatures. Armed with plenty of ammo for their bolters to commit large-scale xenocide, Templars prepared for a drop-pod assault right into the forest. By striking directly at the heart of the mutants' commune, the initial attack would be most effective. The puny Xenos was expected to scatter before the onslaught. After that, it would be only a matter of systematically hunting them down until none of their filth remained. The Templars' zeal and tenacity would make short work of this docile filth. The drop pods hurled down towards the planet with great speed. Inside these pods, Battle Brothers were at the ready. Vows to cleanse the planet were inscribed on freshly written purity seals. The initial strike would be bloody. With an explosive force, the drop pod crashed into the forest. As expected, they were met with little to no resistance. Swathes of the filthy mutants died before their blades and bolters. The slaughter continued relentlessly, but the furries' numbers had been underestimated. As the massacre raged on, the furlings regrouped. These filthy mutants showed their tenacity and refused to just roll over and die. Instead of fleeing, they prepared to go on the offensive. As the massacre continued, the Black Templars were about to fall right into their big, gay trap. A large horde of furries gathered, hidden in the thick underbrush on all sides. As true worshippers of Slaanesh, their plan of attack was to swarm the Templars with sheer numbers and rape them to death. The signal was given, and the horde charged at the Templars. Many of these mutants would continue to die to a steady stream of bolter fire, but their endless numbers knew no bounds, and they would soon overwhelm the strike force. Unbeknownst to the Imperium, the mutants had even cultivated various gigantic, monstrous species within their ranks. Hidden deep within the forest, these giants had remained unnoticed, but no longer. An enormous furling the size of a small titan marched forward as well. The Black Templars were already severely outnumbered, and did not have the firepower to take down the large beast. They had come in with a one-way ticket of drop-pod assault. Surrounded by the mob, retreat was impossible. Thunderhawk evacuation would never arrive on time. The monster grabbed one of the Space Marines and lifted his body from the ground. Trapped in its iron grip, the Space Marine knew his end was near, and shouted for his brothers to avenge him before being inserted into one of the monster's cavities, never to be seen again. The rest of the squad was swiftly taken down by the Horde. The last surviving Templar was swarmed by furlings and would soon perish along with the rest of his squad. In a final act of defiance, he pulled the pin from a grenade and blew himself up, taking as many of the filthy mutants as possible with him to their deaths. The initial strike force sent to cleanse the planet of Pulchra had met with failure. The furries not only survived, but had emerged victorious. When no news of the first strike force returned to the Templars' ship, preparations began to launch a new assault and potentially discover what happened. Clearly, they had encountered more capable foes than first imagined. They had underestimated these mutants, and such a mistake would not happen again. But lacking the numbers to launch a full-scale invasion, more intel on their species was required. Another squad was sent to the planet in a Thunderhawk with a mission to retrieve one of the mutant specimens in order to investigate it. Once the origins of their corruption was understood, perhaps the Black Templars would have a better chance of successfully destroying these foes. And so the Astartes went on a mission to capture one of their misbegotten kind. This proved successful, and another strike team returned to the ship with their captive. They shackled the captured furry in their interrogation chamber. The Slaneshi corruption of these furlings had been left unchecked for far too long. Their mutations had grown strong. Even though the demonic artifacts of their prisoner had been taken away, the corrupting forces that had taken hold of its victim refused to submit itself to interrogation. Powered by dark forces, the furry became host to a lesser demon. It was threatening to break free from its shackles. The Black Templars attempted to kill it, but bolter rounds were not able to destroy it. Finally, one of the Battle Brothers ripped its heart out and put the creature out of its misery. The interrogators uncovered the source of all heresy. The heart was inscribed by a corrupted taint, an ancient heretical anthropomorphized symbol born millennia ago on Holy Terra itself. The Templars discovered that the furries were in fact not of Xenos origin, but were once normal humans before their irredeemable corruption. Signs of their former humanity were now obvious, but they would be exterminated regardless. But before a large enough crusading force could be mustered to perform the cleansing of Pulchra, the planet underwent total corruption. Its once green and lush biome slowly turned into a tainted purple wilderness. The madness of the warp crawled over its surface like a disease, inexplicably deforming entire landscapes like a cancer swelling underneath the planet's surface. The horrific event would eventually be named the Lupus Mortem. The planet had become unrecognizable. 10 Battle Brothers were sent to the surface, tasked with investigating to see if the world could be saved. The scouting force split up into 2 squads, but their communications were disrupted, and one of the squads lost all contact. Upon landing, both the human and furling populations had seemed to have vanished. The Templars pushed on regardless, but as they continued their scouting mission, they were ambushed by parasitic monsters and several Marines were killed. The situation seemed hopeless. The remaining Astartes decided to move towards the planned landing site in hopes of meeting up with their lost brethren. Their path led them out of the jungle towards the most striking landmark of the corrupted planet, a singular red mountain that pierced the sky. As they began their climb, the seismic activity of the mountain became apparent. This came as a complete surprise, as the orbital scans had shown no active tectonic plates or magma chambers in the region. One of the Astartes was caught by the pyroclastic flow that burned through his armor. The 2 remaining Black Templars eventually reached the summit. What happened next would haunt them until the very end. The planet had been corrupted beyond any semblance of logic. They thought they had been observing the planet, but the planet had been observing them. The insanity of the warp had taken manifestation beyond all comprehension. Stuck in terror by this wild, hallucinatory bending of reality, the Marines fled with all haste their gene-enhanced bodies endowed them with. Fortunately, they were able to meet up with the remnants of the other squad, who had been battling worm creatures to protect their Thunderhawk. As they attempted to board the ship, the ground trembled and a crater opened up below their very feet, threatening to swallow the ship. With full thrusters, the ship ascended and managed to escape from the planet. Only a handful of Astartes had managed to escape the horrific nightmares. They returned to the ship and were debriefed on their mission. Clearly, such a serious warp threat would have to be dealt with swiftly. The situation was pushed up the chain of command to make a final decision. Reality had fled Pulchra. Insanity bubbled at its core. Tides of madness spread forth, twisting and breaking the landscape into shapes that caused the human mind to babble and bray. The final verdict was self-evident. The planet of Pulchra would not just be left to die, they would help it die. Exterminatus was the only option. Pulchra had broken from reality, and now too, it must pass from it.